Hello, everyone. My name is Mike. My pronouns are he, him, and I will be the facilitator for a game of Fall of Magic. Um, Fall of Magic is a rules light to the point of being rules non-existent, GM-less story game, which is written by Ross Cowman and is published by Heart of the Deernicorn Publishing. If you've ever seen it, if you never get your hands on an actual physical edition of this game, it is physically beautiful. It has this lovely faux leather scroll. It's lovely. We're going to be using Roll20 for this in our online game. I will try to remember to like switch the camera over to like look at the map time to time if anyone is actually watching this video. We have organized this game through the Open Hearth online gaming community. Let me talk just briefly about Open Hearth. So we are an online gaming community. We run about a we run about a we run several score games a month. I was going to say we used to run about 100 games a month. I'm not sure we're quite there anymore. Open Hearth Gaming is a direct descendant of the former Gauntlet online gaming community. Open Hearth and Gauntlet Publishing parted ways back in February of 2023. But the Open Hearth Gaming is the old Gauntlet online gaming community. So if you do see my YouTube channel and see a bunch of titles that say Gauntlet, it's the same community as Open Hearth. If you're interested in playing with Open Hearth Gaming, check us out on the internet. We are at openhearthgaming, all one word, .org. A little bit about myself. I've been playing tabletop role-playing games for a long time. I started back in 1981 when I was but a lad. I cut my teeth on the Tom Moldvay edition of the Basic and Expert D&D rules. I played a lot of D&D when I was in junior high and high school, but we also played a few other games like Star Frontiers and Gamma World and Traveler. In the 90s, I mostly switched to GURPS, played a lot of GURPS in the 90s, but also some Amber Diceless role-playing. Champions was another big one. In the aughts, we switched back over to D&D 3rd edition, and that's mostly what I played through the aughts was D&D 3rd edition. My group didn't really care for 4th edition, so we played a lot, so we switched over to Pathfinder, and I was a die-hard Pathfinder fan for a long time until I felt buried by the weight of the rule books, both figuratively and physically, because at one point I had every Pathfinder hardcover book and there were 35 of them. My Pathfinder group broke up in 2015, and then I fell into a group that was playing this, weird little hippie story game called Dungeon World, which is my first exposure to story games. And that opened my brain to a whole new way of gaming. And ever since then, I just jumped in feet first into the deep end of the story game pool, and that's mostly what I've been playing ever since. I joined the Open Hearth Gaming Precursor organization back in late 2017, mainly through the old podcast Discern Realities, a Dungeon World podcast. That was my intro to the Gauntlet. Joined the game, played a few games, started jamming in 2018, and I've been playing with Open Hearth off and on for, well, pretty much ever since then. Hey, I have talked a lot about myself. Let's go around the table and have everyone introduce themselves. If you want to mention your name, your pronouns, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience with gaming in general and with Open Hearth, and if you got anything to plug, if you're a game designer and you want to plug anything, that would also be cool. Let's go clockwise around the table as I have you on my screen. So Eli, would you mind going first?
I mean, you can always throw me under the bus, seeing as I am your offspring. I'm Eli Ferdinando. Use they them pronouns. I kind of grew up in a house where role-playing games were always the ubiquitous part of my life, shockingly. That being said, I've played a decent amount of D&D, mostly 3.5 and 5th edition. A good amount of the various Powered by the Apocalypse story games. I like them both a lot. I think they're both great for different things. This is my first time ever playing with a group that is made up of people that I don't at least mostly know in real life. So I'm really excited to be here.
Well, I'm glad you agreed. I'm very, very glad you agreed to join. I think I hope you'll have. I've played Fall of Magic a few times before, and I think you'll have fun with it. Cool. Welcome. Casey, would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, what's up? My name's Casey. I use he, him pronouns. Um, like over a decade ago in college, played fourth edition Dungeons and Dragons, and then like 2 years ago, kind of like stumbled into the indie world and right around the time the Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast Ashcan came out, and I read that and it blew my mind. And got the guys I used to game with back together again, and we played that like a lot. And then followed the spiral into PBTA and just got fascinated by everything about it. And so wound up here looking to play games and learn more. Very excited to be here.
That is fantastic. I'm a big fan of Possum Creek games. I backed the Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast Kickstarter. I've looked at the quick start. I've not actually played it yet, and I'm super excited to once we get it. And oh boy, I've seen the previews. That book is going to be massive. Really glad to have you aboard.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fascinating.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to that game. I think that one's going to be a lot of fun. So, welcome, Casey. Really glad to have you aboard. And finally, Chaotic, would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Chaotic. I use he, they pronouns. I got into gaming in like the mid aughts or so, with like fourth edition for a very brief stint. It lasted about a month, before I went back to 3.5. Kept it till that till I introduced my group to fifth edition when that like came out. And then kept up with that till like I got introduced to Monster of the Week. Tried to keep getting my group to play that. They did not appreciate PBTA, unfortunately, so we kept on playing fifth. And in the last 2 years, I joined with the precursor organization to Open Hearth, and yeah, I've gotten to play more PBTA, but I really like Gauntlet Publishing in terms of like their Fernwood Bay, the Between. My claim to fame on the internet is I've run the most games of that system, so I really enjoy horror, and I also really enjoy GM-less games. I'm also a big fan of Possum Creek games. I've actually ran Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast on the virtual tabletop, and I like it. My group did not like it. I struggle with GM-less games on the internet because they often work better in person than they do online.
Well, very cool. I'm really glad. Chaotic and I have played together a number of times, so I was really, really glad when he decided to join this one. So yeah, I'm really happy to have everyone here. Hey, the next thing I like to do is called a C.A.T.S discussion. C.A.T.S stands for concept, aim, tone, and subject matter, and it's a little it falls under the category of safety tools, but this is sort of like C.A.T.S is like basically letting me give the elevator pitch for this game just to make sure. I know you've all signed up and you read the blurb on the playable calendar. Just want to make sure that we're all here to play the same game, and to set everyone's expectations and to get buy-in that we're all cool with this. So Fall of Magic, Fall of Magic is a GM-less story game. It's rules light to the point that it almost doesn't really have rules. This is going to be more of a guided conversation than anything else. So the concept of this game is we are going to be creating characters that are escorting a shared character called the Magus across across a fantastical magical realm. So this is kind of a fantasy road trip game. Over the course of our journey, we're going to learn about ourselves. We're going to learn about the world. We're going to learn about the Magus. The world is very open, and the way we do this is we're going to be like moving a token across across. If we were playing in person, we'd be moving a physical token across a physical map. In this game, we're going to be using Roll20 to move a virtual token across a virtual map. And there are various locations on this map. So we're going to stop at a location. Each location has a number of story prompts. So when you move your character into here, you'll pick one of the story prompts and tell a little story about your character. You're free to pull in other characters with their consent into your scene, and we will be telling this story together. Like I said, this game is kind of a guided conversation. So, we do take turns. And in addition to playing our own character, we'll also be moving the shared Magus character around as well. And we'll be treating that in a similar way to our own, but we'll talk about that a little bit when we get to actual gameplay. But the concept is it's a magical road trip. We're going to be moving across a map, and we're going to be telling the story of our journey prompted by these story prompts that are printed on the map. Which that segues into the aim of this game, and that is to tell a compelling story about our characters, who they are, and how this journey changes them. So the tone of this game, I have seen, I've played a number of Fall of Magic as one-shots. I've seen people decide to play it, kind of gonzo or kind of humor. That's certainly a possibility. Most of the time, though, this game seems to draw out stories which are a bit melancholy, maybe a bit elegiac. Sometimes the Magus turns into a very tragic character. But I also find that the game is I usually find that even though it may be elegiac, I also often find it to be very hopeful, and interjecting humor is perfectly cool. So the tone is what we make of it. I usually like to try to have that tone evolve naturally through the story prompts and how we do this. The only thing on tone is I'd say, like, let's strike a tone and try to keep it consistent, and we can have a little talk about that once we actually start play. The subject matter. And again, this is a journey. Subject matters that often come up spontaneously in this game include duty, atonement, sacrifice for the greater good, and a great sense of wonder. Because there's some of the story prompts are very evocative, and people often spin some really, really beautiful and wondrous things based on these story prompts. That is C.A.T.S. Anyone have any questions before we move on? The next thing I want to talk about is emotional safety at the game table. So in the sheet I emailed everyone, there should be a link to safety tools. That's a Google sheet. It's also linked from a journal on the Roll20 page. If folks don't have that, I'm also happy to pop that into the Zoom chat. Are folks there, or folks need a moment? Okay, looks like everyone's there. Cool. So, anytime we play role-playing games, especially with strangers or near strangers on the over the internet, when we play role-playing games, we're putting our emotions on the table. We're assuming the personas of fictional characters, and sometimes our characters are sometimes our characters are doing things that are going to stir real emotions in real us, because the brain is an interesting thing, and sometimes it has a hard time separating from what from the make pretend game that we're doing and having real emotions about that. In addition, all of us have different life experiences, and some things that are perfectly okay for you to talk about, I might have some issues with, or I might have some bad experiences with. So so in order to try to mitigate, stepping on emotional landmines, we're going to be using a set of 3 safety tools that will hopefully help us negotiate around these, things that we may not want to talk about or may not want to shine a spotlight on too closely, or if we do end up going there inadvertently, how to back out and how to keep everyone, and how to back out, how to back away from that, and keep everyone feeling good about this. Because this is a game, and the point of this game is to have fun. Each of us individually is more important than this game we are playing together. So we're going to be taking a layered approach, and we're going to be using 3 safety tools. The first and most basic one is called Open Door. The open door policy means anybody can call a break at any time. If things are getting heavy and you need to step away and take a moment, and everyone is free to step away from the table, take a moment, collect your thoughts, or if your landline rings, or someone rings your doorbell, or the dog jumps on your dining room table and knocks over a vase of flowers, and you need to take care of that. Real life takes precedence. So anyone call a break at any time. In addition, not every game is for everyone, and sometimes you don't realize that at the start. Everyone is empowered to say that, what, this game isn't really for me. I think I'm going to, I think I'm going to peace out of this game. And the reaction that we will have if you come to that conclusion is, cool, sorry it wasn't the game to your liking. I hope we can play again. I hope we can play something different in the future. So, the game isn't for you, and you want to do something else, no harm, no foul. Life is too short to play games you're not enjoying. My only request is, if you do need to step away and you're not intending to come back, please let us know. That way we won't won't pause and wait for you to come back if you're not planning to come back. Other than that, yeah, feel free to step away anytime you want. Anyone have any questions about Open Door? Okay, the next tool we're going to be using is called Lines and Veils, and this is a proactive safety tool. So Lines and Veils were developed in the mid-aughts by game designer Ron Edwards for his game Sorcerer. With Lines and Veils, we're going to be calling out specific subject matters that we know we might not want to deal with or have a problem with, or just, don't think it's fun, and we don't want to play with these subjects. If a subject is lined, that means it will not appear in the game. I won't introduce it. The other players won't introduce it. It's just not going to be there. We just won't go there. If a subject is veiled, that means, well, we're okay with acknowledging the existence of this subject. We might see signs that it happened, might hear vague reports of this thing happening, but it's not going to happen on camera per se, and it's not going to happen to any of the player characters. If a veiled subject comes up, we'll treat it very gently, cut away. We're not going to see it. We might talk about it a little bit, but we're not going to actually see it on camera. There's a third category called Ask First. That means you might be okay with the subject under some circumstances, but not okay with something else. So before we introduce an Ask First category, I'm going to ask that we're going to pause the game, put some bounds around it, make sure that everyone's okay with it before we go on. That's Lines, Veils, that's Lines and Veils in a nutshell. I'm going to pause the recording briefly, so we can talk about what our Lines and Veils are, but that's just for us. That's not for our viewers. So I'm going to pause it here, and we'll be back in a moment. All right, we have established lines and veils. I have those sitting in a stick note that's floating on top of all of my other windows, so I will do my best not to take my eye off of that, even if we click away from the actual sheet. There's another section on this, which is called romance options. I have found that Fall of Magic tends not to really be a romancy kind of game, but if I would ask that if folks want to take a moment to let us know whether or not you, the player, would be open to your character engaging in romance, romance with other characters and NPCs. Just go ahead and click, yes, no, ask first, and let me know if you've got any questions on that. And again, this may not, this isn't really a part of the game. If this is the sort of thing that would be pretty much entirely player driven. I'm a player, so I actually need to fill that out too. Okay, it looks like everyone has selected the ask first option, so that's going to make it a little easier. The final thing, this isn't exactly a safety tool, but this is the time to mention it. Just in case something happens to me or my internet connection, and I either freeze and you lose the connection, or I look concernedly over my left shoulder, take off my headphones, and walk off camera without much ceremony, and I don't come back for 10 minutes, assume something has happened, and that the game is off for the rest of the evening. I'll do my best to contact you as best I can and as quickly as I can. But every once in a while we get a power failure or an internet outage or something like that. And if that happens, it's kind of like when you were in college and the rule of thumb was if your prof doesn't show for the first 10 minutes, doesn't show for 10 minutes of class, class dismissed, everyone goes home. But I have everyone's contact information, so as soon as I'm able to, I will let you know what's going on. That concludes our safety discussion. Does anyone have any questions before we move on? Awesome. Okay, let's talk Fall of Magic. Let's hop on over to the Roll20 page. So the way this game works, the characters are really, really paper thin on paper. I'm going to have you on Roll20. I'm going to have you click the plus character button to open a super simple character sheet. All you need, and all you start out with is a name and a title. If you look at the map, we're going to be starting way over on the left-hand side where it says Fall of Magic. So yeah, you're going to pick a name. You can choose from that pick list or make one up, and then you'll pick a title. Basically, just pick one from those pick lists. And now you may ask, what is Stormguard, or what would it mean that you are a raven, or what does it mean that you are a crab singer? And my answer is whatever you want it to be. When you hit character, it's going to when you do hit plus character, it's going to just put a random name in there, so you can just go ahead and change that. So the way I usually like to do this is so let's start the ritual of play. And the ritual of play begins of stating the premise. Magic is dying, and the Magus is dying with it. We travel together to the realm of Umbra, where magic was born. So I'm going to ask people to. I'm going to put people on the spot, and I'm going to ask you one at a time to pick a name and a title. Let's go in counterclockwise order on my screen. So Chaotic, would you like to go first?
All right. I shall be playing Azure Fox of Mistwood.
Awesome. And Casey, would you like to go next?
Sure. Let's go with Piccolo, the Swineherd of Barley Town.
And Eli, would you like to pick one? And you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, this is tricky to do on a laptop. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. I think I will go with Caspian, crab singer of Istallia.
Okay. I think I am going to be Moon, Apprentice of Ravenhall. And that's pretty, and if we were playing in person, your character sheet would just be a 3x5 index card. And you just like write that down and that's your character. So in this, we've got these like super simple character sheets that just has that. And looks like, yeah, just everyone could take a moment to put that in, put their name and their title in their um, in their character sheet, just so that we have a list of them. And Eli, if you're having trouble, I'm happy to do that for you, because I know if you're having trouble on a small screen. And next, I would ask that if folks wouldn't mind clicking on their name in the Zoom and renaming yourself to have your name in the in the Zoom window.
All right, so super unfamiliar with Zoom, and due to my technological constraints, I'm using it on my phone. So,
Oh,
if
okay.
you could tell me more, like a more specific, how am I supposed to do that?
I never used this on a phone, so I don't know.
Okay, okay.
I can change it for you if that's okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Leaving my pronouns blank because I haven't figured that out yet. And Casey, you were Piccolo, Swineherd of Barley Town.
Yep. And I'll go him for Piccolo.
Where did you want us to put the names in the anywhere other than Roll20 and on Zoom?
Nope, that's it.
Coolio.
These are some of the longest Zoom names I've ever seen, but hey. There we go. Oh, okay. So we have our characters. So let me pull up the setup. So the way this is going to work is now if you can scroll the map, switched, and if you're not sure how to do it, you can again, I don't quite know how to do this on a phone. you'll see in the lower right, the lower left-hand corner of the map, there are 6 pairs of tokens.
I got the
and-
Roll20 on my laptop, just a heads up.
Oh,
So I'm good on
okay.
that.
Okay, cool,
Thank you,
cool. So if you want to go over to the lower left corner, you'll notice that there are 6 pairs of tokens. So I would ask that everyone like pick a set of tokens for you to use. We were playing in person, these would be like the obverse and reverse of these like campaign coins. They're actually pretty cool. And use like whichever one that you want to use. And at any point that you feel like the symbol on the other side is more appropriate for your character, just flip it over. So we're each going to pick one, and then from the remaining ones, we're going to pick one that's going to represent the Magus.
I will note that I cannot move these coins whatsoever.
Cannot move the coins.
Are they on the right layer or given the right permissions?
That is a good question. Yeah, I can't move them either, and I'm the GM. Okay.
Is it part of the image? Like background image?
They shouldn't be. I'm going to pause the recording for a moment because we seem to be having technical issues with Roll20. Okay, we figured out our Roll20 issues. And I think we are pretty much ready to start play. I'm going to go ahead and read so I am going to just go through the setup document just to make sure that we've done everything correct. So we have read the introduction. All of our players have chosen our names and titles. We have chosen our tokens, and we've placed the Magus on Ravenhall, where our journey begins. So I'm going to ask folks. I'm actually going to ask folks to move their tokens to basically where it says Fall of Magic, because when it's your turn, you will move your character onto Ravenhall. Ravenhall is the initial location. So I'm going to go over. Let's go over playing the game. So I'm going to be reading the playing the game handout here. So every one of these locations has a title. You know what? I'm going to share my screen here so anyone who is viewing at home can follow along. Okay, so on the scroll, you'll see that every location has a title. In this case, the first one is Ravenhall. And then there are a number of locations. There's a number of places in the location. So for example, here in Ravenhall, we've got the Great Hall, the Rose Gardens, the Scrying Pool, the Menagerie, and the Bridge. When it is your turn, you can move your character token onto the location and describe the scene from their perspective. You then pick one of these locations you want to, and use the story prompt to sort of like weave your story, to like weave what the story prompt tells you into your story. and we'll just have a little scene. So the guide suggests and then when you're done, let us know when your scene is completed, and then we'll go to the next character. So each player will do one. We'll do one scene in that location. When it comes back around to you again, you can choose to have another scene at a different story prompt, or if you've already gone, you can choose to pick the Magus and move the Magus to the next location. And then kind of do the same thing and describe the new location from the Magus's perspective. I'll go over that a little more once we have. I'll go over that a little more once we've actually had a chance to play. If it's okay with everyone, one other thing that I do want to mention is in every location there are some story prompts that have a plus sign next to them. And what are they called? Bear with me here. Okay, those are called traits. And so when you want to move your token, if you move your token to a location that that lists traits, it's pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same thing. You pick one of the traits and you still tell your story, but the way you want to tell your story is such that your character is that you can assign a trait to either your own character, or you can assign the trait to another character that you had introduced into that scene. So I'm just going to read an example from the rules. So a character moves their token to the Rose Gardens. And they narrate, a small crowd of townsfolk is gathered in the Rose Garden. I ask one of them, a young boy, why is it that so many have gathered here? The boy says, haven't you heard? The Magus has chosen an apprentice. And the boy gets an excited look on his face. Hey, look, they've arrived. And then Kebu, the apprentice, steps out of the balcony. And they describe Kebu, and they overlook the Rose Garden, waving at the crowd cheers. Waving at as the crowd cheers, and then they choose legendary as a title for themselves. There are other prompts that have a leaf next to them. That's called changes, and you basically do the same thing there, except in that case, you remove something that you've accumulated on your character, whether that's part of your title, part of your name, other traits that you've picked up. And there's some prompts in which we encounter perils, and I'll talk about perils once we move to a location that has them. Does anyone have any questions on this before we begin?
Which one of the documents has like the list of prompts, or is that something that I'm just missing?
That is on the sheet, roll 20.
Oh, okay.
It's
Yeah,
literally on the map. For example, Ravenhall has the scene of the bridge, and its prompt is
Okay.
you're facing
Gotcha.
the river.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. Cool.
So yeah,
and each location has 3 or 4 just straight up prompts, and it's going to have one location that is going to have either traits or changes or perils. So if you choose that, we'll engage with the traits, perils, or changes mechanic once that comes up. And that's really it for game mechanics. So ultimately, we're going to be moving. If you do choose to move the Magus, you follow this path that's printed on. You follow the path that's printed on the map. So from Ravenhall, if you chose to move the Magus, the next location would be the Oak Hiills. And once we're done with there, and we move the Magus, the next location would be Barley Town. From Barley Town, we then have a choice, because as you can see, the road diverges, and you could choose to go either to Stormguard Mountains or to Mistwood. And we just, follow that some more. There's some point later in the game where there's an option to like go into like caverns below the earth and have like some more dungeony kind of things, or alternatively to board a ship and sail across the ocean and possibly encounter some weird stuff on islands. And we'll get to that if and when we get to that. Looking at the time, we're about an hour into this. I think this might be a good time to let's take a 5-minute break. Come on back and we'll start playing Earnest. It's a kitty. Hi, kitty.
He wants to eat my shoelaces.
What's the kitty's name?
His name is Colonel Ferdinand Fluffy Bottom III. We call him Bug, because that's about as smart as he is.
That's fair.
I've got I don't know where she is at the moment, but I've got a very large and very dumb cat who occasionally shows up on video.
I have two very small, well, kind of small and dumb cats.
Yeah, he's a big boy. Like if he like hits you with his paws, you will get a bruise.
Aw,
But he's gentle.
he's so cute.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So I am happy to since I'm the facilitator of this game, I'm happy to start to sort of lead by example. If anyone else would rather take the lead, I'm happy to cede that. Would anyone like to go first? I'm happy to do it.
Sure, I'll go first if you want.
Go for it.
Mhm.
So move your token onto one of the locations in Ravenhall and tell us a story.
I think this scene starts out pretty early in the day, near dawn. I think this is the moment before this, well, I presumed group ever got together. At least, yeah, not yet. I think there is this very large and imposing bridge that heads towards Ravenhall, where the Magus resides. Multiple people, even like at this hour, nearly after daybreak, are passing back and forth. It's just very busy. And we see Azure, the fox of Mistwood, contemplating on just leaving because recently he got a pardon for his thievery, and he wonders what the words meant that he heard from the Magus. You should take a good long look at yourself and reflect on your life, on who you are and who you are meant to be. And I think that's where that scene ends.
Lovely. Anyone like to go next? I'm happy to. So yeah. So sure, I'll go. So the camera, kind of like hands back and is like looking at Ravenhall and its well manicured grounds. Behind Ravenhall, near kind of a large formal hedge maze. It's not part of the hedge maze, but it's like just beyond it. There's a large You know, there's a fairly large pool that's in a like it's a circular pool. It's in kind of like a white marble basin. And it's just it's a beautiful day. The sky is blue, just a few wisps of clouds in the sky, and it's probably late summer. Standing near the pool is a young person who is wearing blue robes. They've got they've got kind of short cropped dark hair. But they pull their hood back, and you see that they've got a number of like tattoos like on their neck and on their and on their cheeks of various geometric patterns, arcane symbols. I don't know, you're not a wizard, but perhaps this person is. And this person leans on the pool and is looking into the pool. And we see the person's reflection as they're looking into this pool. And there's like a shimmer. It's not waves on the surface, but it's almost like a magical shimmer. As they look into the pool, they see a much younger version of themselves they don't have tattoos. Their hair is much longer. And looks like they're, at least 5 or possibly even 10 years younger, just barely a child. Being brought, this person's mother is bringing them into this large room and says, child is showing this child shows power, and has abilities that other children don't. And we're afraid that we're afraid of this power, and that we think only you could be the one to teach her. And an older woman strides forward, and she's got very similar tattoos on her face. She pulls back her cloak, and she's got long white hair. And her cloak is, her cloak is also blue and is also stitched with, her cloak is also stitched with geometric or arcane symbols. And she steps forward. She gets down on one, she's holding her staff, and she sits down on one, she crouches down on one knee to look at this child square in the eye and says, "Don't be afraid, child. Let me look at you." And she gazes into this child's eyes for what seems to be a long time, and then nods. Stands, looks at the mother, and says, "Yes, I will take this one as my apprentice." And we go back to, and the scene shifts, and we're looking at the scene as reflected in this pool. And now this young person is standing next to that same older woman, puts a hand on the young person's shoulder and says, "Moon, I'm going to rely on you. We have a long journey ahead of us. Magic is fading from the world, and I need to do something, and we need to do something about it." I think that's the scene. Aesir, Eli, would either of you like to go next? Would you like me to call on someone?
No, sure, I can go.
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm gonna put my token on the menagerie, and I think it's kind of like a fair type scene at the where the menagerie is displayed out to the public here at Ravenhall, and Piccolo's pretty overwhelmed, I think, coming from a smaller town to this this sort of larger more pomp and circumstance type of environment, and so just like wandering through the beginning part of the street where there's vendors and all that kind of thing, and then as the menagerie starts, it might I think it's sort of like mundane animals to begin with, so on and so forth, and the farther you get into it, the closer to like the main part of the hall of Ravenhall, there's like more mythical or more magical beasts, and I think as he gets to probably one of the last few animals that's there, we have the sort of he's caught in awe of the magic of the creature that's there, and it reminds him of the last time that he saw real magic, which would have been sometime long ago in Barley Town. If magic is leaving the world, I get the sense that it was probably pretty common, I suppose, around, and so maybe when they were younger, there was a magic user in their hometown that saved a harvest, or saved maybe even saved a herd of swine. No, a litter. Is it a litter? Yeah, or something like that. That's deeply connected to what Piccolo does and who he identifies as. And times have been a lot harder since then because they don't have the resource, right? So I think he's sort of left in melancholy contemplation of magic and what it means, and if magic is leaving, then maybe these same magical beasts are also leaving, and I think he's just caught in that moment of contemplation, in that and maybe contemplating the fact that like a zoo, right? Like zoos as conservation, right? The idea that maybe in order to save something, you have to keep it caged. And I think maybe that's where we leave that scene.
I think as our view sort of flows over this great hall with all of these beautiful and grandiose spaces, sort of our view stops on the great hall of Ravenhall. And just quick point of order, I did change the pronouns of my character because I was thinking about who I want them to be. And we kind of are looking at this relatively young woman. She's kind of doing some cleaning, making sure everything is the greatness and the beauty of this space, of this central room of this large manor house and estate, is looking its best, so that as our group makes their preparations for their journey, there are potentially our last journey. We have this one cohesive image of this place that we are leaving in our minds. Caspian has been in Ravenhall for a little while, not too long, as the magic of this world has faded. I have become aware of the fact that there is little use for a crab singer, for one who calls the shellfish from the sea. You know, without that magic to call them, they don't respond to my songs anymore. And so I came to Ravenhall, to the Magus, in an attempt to find the answer to why magic is leaving, why the old songs, the old ways are no longer working in the way that they have for as long as we can remember in Istallia. And the Magus opened her great library, her history of the realms, of forgotten magics, catalogs of songs and stories that go back further than even the records of my homeland go back. And I am so happy and yet so sad to be leaving this space and leaving with her. But there is still hope on the horizon. And when we find why magic is leaving, we can come back here and we can come back home. I think that's where the scene ends.
Lovely. I think we've got a really interesting beginning to the story. So we've all taken a turn in this location. When it's your turn again, you will have a choice to move to another location in the current, to another like position in Ravenhall, or if you would like, you could instead move the Magus to the next location, and then once the Magus is moved, that ends the scenes in the previous location, and we'll start doing scenes in the new one. But if you don't think we're done with Ravenhall, and you want to keep going in Ravenhall, that's perfectly cool. We've all taken a turn. Would anyone in particular like to go next? I know Chaotic let us off here, so. But if you would rather someone else go, that's also cool.
I do still want to like do a little bit more in Ravenhall.
Please, it's your prerogative.
Okay. Like, I think Azure has decided to stay a little bit longer because, well, he hasn't made up his mind either way. And he's decided to head out towards the Rose Gardens. The walls here made of stone to like hold up and give structure to these wonderful rose bushes growing up them, towering high, but Azure can like climb up there no problem. And just is sort of bouncing along them, seeing people just idly gossip about what the Magus is going to do next. Is she going to be traveling to figure out what's going on with the magic? And Azure just considers things. And I would like to invite someone else to join me in the scene, as someone who spots me where I obviously should not be currently.
I'm happy to do that because I think I think Moon actually like lives in Ravenhall if
Mhm.
they're the apprentice of the Magus.
Mhm.
So Moon, the young woman we'd seen by the scrying pool, like approaches and sees someone they don't know in the Rose Garden, which is usually a private area of Ravenhall. And they walk up and say, hello there.
Mhm.
Can I help you?
Sure. You look like a person that actually knows what's going on around here. Is it true that the Magus is leaving today? Or is that just
In
I gossip?
that is indeed true. We are gearing up for a long journey.
Mm.
I have asked the Magus if she is planning to return, and I have not gotten I've not gotten an answer.
Mm.
She responds in that mysterious way of wizards.
Mm. Oh, that's unfortunate. Aren't you one of her apprentices? You have this, and I make a little hand gesture, magic-y look about you.
At that, Moon kind of half size, but also has just a little bit of a smirk, as if they're trying to be humble, but at the same time are really actually proud of being an apprentice. Yes, I've been serving with the Magus for well, several years now. She has taught me some things, but yeah, it's getting harder and harder to work magic right now.
Mm.
And I mean, I think she's going off to try to find out what's wrong.
Well,
What
let's
bring
see.
what brings you here, if I may be so bold as to ask?
Uh, well, I'm surprised that most people don't know me here. That's rather unfortunate. And like, I think I hopped down off the wall very gracefully. For see, I am the legendary Fox of Mistwood. I know those trails, those places like the back of my hand, and I make sure things are appropriately dealt with in terms of justice. And I give like a deep bow. And I think Moon would have heard of this, as the Fox of Mistwood is a renowned thief.
Can I ask what the Fox of Mistwood like looks like? What do we see?
Sure. I think getting a direct look, I think it's sort of like what appears to be sort of like leather pants, a brown tunic, a green cloak, pretty much what you would expect from like a sort of ranger character. But you also see like in like sort of the crevices, like little bangles, little orbs, things that like containers of sorts that seems a little bit off for a ranger's profession.
Oh, so you are you are the Fox of Mistwood? Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I think the Magus might like to meet you.
Mm-hmm. We have met briefly, and she gave me an ominous telling, or at least an opinion, maybe a fortune to some, but I don't think that's what it is.
Are you going to share that, or are you going to keep that to yourself? Asks Moon.
I think I'll keep it to myself, but I will give you a hint because that's only fair. I think I may be traveling with you.
I had a feeling you might be saying that. I had a feeling.
I think that's a good spot to end the scene.
Okay, so this is a place where you can choose to claim for yourself or assign to somebody else one of those three traits, and that's going to be a word that we will add to your character sheet.
I'm going to assign legendary to myself.
Works for me. Does anyone else, would anyone else like to? I think technically, if we're gonna keep going in the order we had, and we certainly don't have to. I think I would technically be next, but I'm happy to let someone else go if they've got an idea of what they want to do either here in Ravenhall, or if you'd like got an idea of how you'd like to move the Magus to the next location.
I think it kind of makes sense for you to go next since you were just in the scene, so like it's sort of like it's following you. But I'm
Okay.
also to if anyone else wants to go.
Okay. Well, in that case, I think I'm going to move the Magus. And so there is a bit of fanfare. I mean, not literally. I mean, there's not literally like a band playing a fanfare, but the people near Ravenhall know that there's something going on, and I think we see like brief vignettes of the Magus talking to both Piccolo and Caspian, and basically inviting you on a journey. And I think when we see those scenes, we don't actually hear the dialogue. We just see a brief thing of the Magus in her robe, in her like silver hair. She's got shoulder lengths. I'm gonna like throw some more description on her. She's got shoulder length silver hair. It always seems to be like blowing in the wind, even if there isn't actually any wind. And some time has passed, and there is a bit of a procession as 5 figures ride out of Ravenhall. In the lead is Moon, who is on a who's on kind of a small dappled horse. Next, followed by the Magus, who is riding a blinding white unicorn that was taken from the menagerie that we established had magical creatures in it. And who is also followed by Piccolo and Caspian, also on horseback. And I'll let you tell us what it looks like. I'm gonna briefly toss this over to Eli and Casey just to like give a brief description of what it looks like what it looks like as the two of you are riding out.
Sure. I think that Caspian is sitting in a very kind of in contrast to the Magus and Moon. Caspian is sitting side saddle, despite the almost, you know, riding very, very efficiently, like totally having no problem keeping pace, but it's riding side saddle, which is a little bit at odds with the rather the kind of unsettlingly damp and like seaweed streaked horse that she is riding, because it is in fact maybe a horse, maybe a kelpie. It's not entirely clear. The lines are blurred now as magic has been fading, and it seems it is now maybe more horse than mythological creature.
Nice. Casey, would you like to describe your like how Piccolo rides out of Ravenhall?
I think, yeah. Piccolo has a very plain, normal looking, just a brown horse that he rides, and I think feels pretty out of place, but also got asked to come on this journey, so is like feeling the weight of the enormity. Maybe given the as illustrated by the stark contrast between his horse and the unicorn, which is probably the animal that he spent the longest time looking at in the menagerie and contemplating the dying of the magic, and his place within that, and this journey. I think that's what's going on with him.
And I'm going to, and chaotic. I'm just thinking, like, you know, hey, it's Fox of Mistwood. Like, where are you? Are we catching up with you? Are you like bringing up the rear? Are you like on a hill, like watching, like what?
Yeah, I think
Where
it's
do we see Fox?
more or less like Azure is enough that if you were looking in the right direction, you would see Azure, like, because like for some reason he seems to just travel faster on foot than people on horseback.
Nice. So, so the procession leaves Ravenhall, and the crowd, you know, the crowd parts as they see the Magus and her apprentice and her small and odd retinue ride out of Ravenhall. And it's you know, it's morning. It's a beautiful summer day, late in summer. It's and you know, we see a little bit of you know, so we see a little bit of a montage of this group journeying down down through you know, down past farmers' fields and through some small copse, like some small like wooded areas, past some villages, past some more fields, and then the road becomes less traveled as it goes through woodlands, and the ground becomes hilly. And you enter the Oak Hills. This is a hilly area. This is a hilly area, and it's you know, covered with, you know, it's, and the predominant tree here is our oaks. There are some maples and some elms and some ash, but it's a lot of oaks here. And it is late summer. The trees are deep green, and some of them are just starting to turn. The leaves are just starting to turn a little bit brown, or a little bit orange, a little bit golden. as you ride into, as the five of you ride into the hills, as the sun is starting to set. Sun's getting a little lower in the sky, and the road does stretch in front of you, but this is you know, and you are all in these hills, and the Magus on her and the Magus on her and the Magus is on her unicorn. It does not have a saddle. She's just sitting on a blanket, and the unicorn does not have a bit and bridle. She's just holding on to its mane. Sometimes she's got her arms around the unicorn's neck as she rides it, and she steers it mainly by leaning forward and whispering at the unicorn. And I think that's the setup scene. Would like to go next?
I can.
Take it away.
Sure. So I think by firelight, a comfort from home. The night we make our first camp, I think the comfort from home is probably some, let's say, pipe tobacco. So Piccolo settles down by the firelight and is post dinner, probably all the camp things are taken care of, and just lights a pipe and is thinking of home, how they might be there again, but inevitably how they're going to have to leave there again. And if someone wants to jump into that scene, have a conversation, that's fine. Otherwise, that's all I really wanted to accomplish there.
I think, just as a general manner, I think Azure just naturally sneaks up on people. It's been rather quiet sort of travel as of late, don't you think?
Piccolo is probably not very accustomed to being snuck up on by anybody, really, not really his bag. So as startled as he is, he's trying to maintain his composure and put on a brave face. So just with like the Midwestern small talk pleasantries of is like indeed, but quiet travel makes for light work, don't you think?
Sure. That I figured there would be at least a little bit more talking amongst compatriots, going forward towards a noble goal of this sort of thing. Power of friendship and what have you. You're just you're a little bit the odd duck in this group, aren't you?
I've been told I'm an odd duck in many places, so it's no surprise to me. But the Magus has asked for me to come and to fulfill that duty. Might make us all odd ducks.
Not really. I at least considering that there's some patterns of recognition. You've got the magical apprentice, you've got the famous crab singer, and then you've got me, who has a little bit of infamy, as it were. But then it's just you, a swineherd from Barley Town.
We can't all be legends.
Well, But you've got to have done something in life, right? This can't be the most magnificent thing you've ever done.
It might be. It might be the. It might be the most fantastical thing any of us ever does. The tales of the exploits of the legendary Fox of Mistwood may not have reached all the way to Barley Town, but I'm almost certain anything we're doing with the Magus will far outstrip those legends.
Oh, you wound me.
No offense, man. No offense, man.
Oh, my life's work being shadowed by what amounts to a joyful ride through the countryside. I suppose this is probably one of the reasons that we don't talk, but oh well. I try to make friends. And I think at that I just like walk backwards and just disappear into like a bush or something very ominously.
Nice.
Azure just disappears into the shadows.
I mean, that's that. I like the end of that.
That's a great scene. I love that. I love that.
That's genuinely hilarious. Love it.
See, so that was Piccolo's scene. Do
Points
we
to
want?
Piccolo for just the subtle digs at Azure. Just big fan of that.
Do we? I'll put it to you. Do you think the camera follows Azure's point of view after that scene, or do we want it to go to a different character?
Because I imagine like the scene I'm aiming for next would be probably at dawn. So if like
Okay.
anyone wants to like have like another night scene, like they should go ahead of me.
I have an idea, but if you want to go.
No, I'm all right. I think we can go on to the dawn scene.
Well, I was going to say I've got one. If I know I did the. Well, okay. That's right. I've already moved the Magus, so I have. Everyone needs to go before. I take another turn.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess we can go right to dawn.
Mm-hmm. I think like the camera is like panning over like the camp, seeing the various shapes and sleeping forms of our compatriots. Azure not in scene, and like it goes up above, and like we see sleeping in the branches of trees is Azure. And as the dawn breaks, I think the lazy eye of Azure opens. I think it's something that I don't think anyone has noticed because, well, magic, at least as Azure would describe it, is on the fritz right now rather than it's actually dying. Magic always comes back. It has to. And we see, instead of a normal human eye, is a fox eye. But then it quickly transforms back into a human one. I think Zur pulls out sort of this little contraption. It's like a round thing at first, but then a spring has been let go and it snaps to into sort of like a miniature telescope. And I think Zur just takes a little peek at it, looking at the horizon, seeing like what's on the road ahead. And that's where I'm gonna end it.
I think it's your turn, Eli.
Yeah. So I have an idea for either the Harper's Road or making camp. So Mike, I know you said that you had an idea you had something you wanted to do for Moon. So if you have a preference between the two of those.
Go ahead and you go ahead and make the call, and I'll do my best to build on the fiction that's been established.
Okay, cool. In that case, I think that it's yet another day of not particularly hard travel coming to a close. There we go. As our lovely little traveling companion, our band of misfits, as Azure so beautifully put it, kind of gets as the sun sort of starts to go down and the day winds down and we start setting up for the evening. And I think that Caspian is a practical person. She is this very, very, practical kind of individual. And it's like, okay, well, there's a problem and, here's what we're going to do about it. And that's kind of the approach that she has had to this fading, this receding of the magic around her and in her life and in her world. So she starts, as we start, setting up for the evening, bedrolls are getting pulled out and the horses are all, or the mounts, I should say, not horses, are all, tied up and fed and watered, and it's been raining a little bit and she is really struggling to get a fire going. It's all that she's trying to do, get that fire going, get some tea, maybe some stew up and running. And I would love to, I know we've all kind of gotten in there, but I'd love to invite somebody else to join me in the scene as she's just kind of in the middle of the camp, really not able to get this fire lit.
Yeah, Moon hasn't interacted. Can I join the scene?
Please.
Okay. So I think Moon sees Caspian struggling to get a fire lit. And crouches down next to him and says, or crouches down next to her and says, hard to get it. It is always hard to get a fire going when it's this damp.
I will admit my talents have never quite laid in that particular element as it is.
Well, I've been known to cheat a little bit, and she reaches, or they reach into their cloak and they pull out a small pouch and you know, they open up a pouch and pull out a small amount of powder, this like glittery powder, and puts the pouch, just takes this pinch of powder, like puts the pouch away. Moon says just a couple of words, makes a couple of gestures, tosses the powder at the fire, and points and says one more magic word, and there are a few sparks, but the fire doesn't start. And she looks puzzled, she looks puzzled and troubled at that. She looks at, and she looks at Caspian and says, that's never not worked before. Let me try it again. And she goes through the motion. She does exactly the same thing again, and this time it works. And this time, just a little bit of a fire starts, but it's enough that Caspian can feed some fire to it, or feed some kindling to it, and actually get a fire going. But Moon looks troubled that took 2 tries.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I'm playing Moon here, the more I think I'm going to change. I think I'm going to change Moon's pronouns.
That's just like playing your real PC in life.
So I'm going to hand the story back. This is still Caspian scene, so I'll ask you to take it from there.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and I think it's very important to note that Caspian carries herself like there's something at times a little bit performative about how stately she seems to carry herself. She does perpetually there's an element of damp and of wet that seems to perpetually cling to her. So as she finishes kind of building up this fire, kind of reaches over as Moon is kind of starting to walk away, and I would assume most likely head back to what she was doing before. And Caspian kind of catches the edge of her sleeve a little bit and very lightly squeezes her hand and says, "It was extremely kind of you to help me here." And I think that Caspian is going to get to assign the
You can assign one. Yep, you can assign one of those traits to either yourself or another character that was in the scene.
I think I'm going to assign that trait to Moon.
I'm going to assign kind to Moon. Okay, thank you. Let me put that on my sheet.
And then she kind of just goes back to getting some rations up and running, and it's a soup, a stew. It's a little bit watery. More of a she's going for stew, but it ended up more as like soup. Her cooking, she likes cooking for our party. But all of the food seems to have like an odd kind of fishy undertaste to it. But yeah. And then I think that's where the scene kind of just ends, with her bustling around making those final little preparations. And yeah.
Okay, cool. I think it's my turn. So it's the next day, it's midday, and we are continuing down the road. And at this point, I think it looks like we're probably starting to, the hills aren't quite so hilly. We may be starting to leave the Oak Hills. And we're on a road that's fairly well traveled, although we're pretty much the only travelers that we've seen today. And Moon's got kind of a faraway look in her eye as we continue down the road. And as we're riding, she fishes out from around her neck a pendant. And of all things, this pendant is made of, I think it's on like a leather cord. What's on the end of the pendant is, of all things, it's like an old silver spoon, and the handle of the spoon has been folded back over on itself and fused back together. So it's like a spoon on it's a spoon on a simple leather cord, and this doesn't look like it's a particularly valuable or precious spoon. But she's holding it and she's looking at it, and as she's like riding her horse down, and I think it's the sort of thing where the camera fades, the camera like fades away and like does the smash cut of like the spoon on the end of the pendant that she's looking at to a spoon that's being held and is like stirring a pot. And we see that earlier image that we saw in Moon's opening scene of her as a young child, helping her mother in the kitchen. And she is and her mother's basically teaching this young girl how to cook. And and we just, and she's like thinking of her mother. And I think this might have been the incident so as we're doing that, the fire starts to burn a little low, and Moon gestures toward the fire, and it shoots up like all around the pot. The fire greatly increases in intensity to the point where it startles her mother, who drops the ceramic, who drops the bowl that had whatever it was she was mixing, and it falls on the floor, and the crock shatters, and the spoon like clatters on the floor. And she looks at Moon and says, "Moon, you've got to stop doing that." She's like, "I'm sorry, Mom." And it looks like she's very, very scared, but and the flames die back down. And then she said then her mother gives Moon a hug and said, "It's okay. It's okay. You can't control it. We really need to learn, because this is going to get dangerous." She says, I know, I'm sorry. It goes back to, and the scene shifts to like looking at her looking at that spoon in her hand. I think that's the scene of Who You Left Behind. She's leaving her mom behind. So we've all gone. Looking at the time, want to take a quick 5-minute break, then we'll come up, maybe do one more scene, because we've got about 45 minutes left to play. So yeah, let's take 5 minutes, come back, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, and we're back. So we have all gone. I was the last person to go, so someone other than me should we've all taken a turn, so if anyone wants to go next, we could stay in the Oak Hills, or if someone wants to move the Magus on to the next location, which is Barley Town. Anyone feeling it, or want me to put I'm happy to put someone on the spot.
I'm from the Midwest, so I'm always going to defer and like be you might have to call me out, but I can
Um,
also force myself to volunteer too.
I don't mind moving the Magus. Remind me again kind of how that is. It just
So it's basically you move the
okay.
Magus to the new location, and your story prompt is um the name, is the subheader. So
Mhm.
if
Okay,
you're
so
gonna,
hospitality of the Barley
so
Lord.
it'll be Hospitality of the Barley Lord is your story prompt.
Cool. Um, okay, yeah, I can do that unless someone else feels particularly so inclined. Um, so yeah. As the hills, as we come down the Harper's Road and out of the hills, the Oak Hills, we see Barley Town up on the horizon. The Magus seems, despite the fact that she is riding in the midst of her traveling party, she is always leading them in a way. It is her unicorn that directs them. And she feel as they approach the edges of the town, she feels the weight of that responsibility heavy on her shoulders. She looks to her apprentice, Moon, spearheading their group as they come to the gates of Barley Lord's Manor, and Moon explains who they are. Not that an explanation is necessarily needed with her unicorn there and the magic still swirling around her, but it is quieter, less obvious to her eyes. Her senses feel more dulled than they ever have before in her long life, and she is unaccustomed to the tiredness she feels deep in her bones as the Barley Lord welcomes them into his home. Thrilled to see her again. She remembers him as a young man, and when he had just become the Lord, and it is the same level of kindness that greets her there. Barley Town is prosperous, and that prosperity tends towards kinder, more joyful people. And so they rest a little while in this town and in this hall.
I love it. That sounds like end of scene.
That's it. Yep,
I
that's
love it.
insane. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Anyone like to volunteer to go next?
I'm fine with going next. I think for as much as the hospitality is welcome, I think just the nature of like the food at Barley Manor of being this extremely wealthy and luxurious place is it's a bit too rich for my tastes. So Azure is just gone back into town, found this like a little quaint little inn called of the Axe and Fiddle, and I think he honestly just hears the song of his people, as it were, as like he sees some up and coming ruffians, as it were, making their like ways through being small time pickpockets. He honestly has a little bit of a bit of a softie, you know, like he like takes like some of his like little mangles and balls and whatnot and hangs them sort of on the outside of like his cloak, so they're really easy to just pick off his belt and just be taken away. Yeah. It's honestly just adorable seeing like where their hands reach and try to grab. Like if he was slightly pettier, he would probably like move their hands into the correct positions of where they shouldn't get caught. But they'll live and learn. But at least the food here is better. Nice stew. Warms the bones. Even though it's still like late summer, there's still this sort of ominous chill in the air. And I think that's where my scene's going to end.
Hey, so I think Casey and I still have to go. Casey, would you like to go, or would you prefer that I go next?
I can go. I got a brief idea. I think that's uh yeah. So Piccolo is from Barley Town. But I think there's probably some tension between like the like the richness of the barley trade that provides the wealth of the area and like the pragmatism of being a swineherd in such a place. Um, so he might not be too enthralled with all of that going on either. And either way, it ends up making his way to Matilda's farm. Again, being home is great, but having to leave it again relatively probably so soon is weighing on his mind. And so he goes to speak to Matilda. I don't know what their relation is, but what she thinks he needs is definitely a stern talking to about like uh, going off on adventures and like, you know, you're a simple man from a simple place. Um, you know, and I think he just insists that he wants to help and that as much as he had to find a place for himself in Barley Town because you know man cannot live on bread alone, maybe it's time for him to do that out in the world, and perhaps by doing so he can bring back some former glory to or help back to Barley Town that isn't so centric on the barley trade, and which can be very fleeting as a crop. I think it's a dangerous one, volatile.
Cool. I guess if that's the scene, I guess I'll go next. right cursor here. Here we are. I think it's the next. So I think it's either the next morning or it's possible we've stayed in Barley Town for a few days. It's kind of unclear, but it's morning. And we see Moon at the farmer's market. It's bustling. There are stalls everywhere, and she's got like a large basket and some empty sacks with her, and she's going through and is just buying up a whole bunch of supplies for the long journey ahead. And I think it's still summer, but it's clearly getting closer to fall now. So like some time has passed since we first entered the Oak Hiills. Trees are still green, but they're definitely but most of the trees are still green. But as you look around, you see, especially as you look across the river to Oak Island, most of the leaves many of the leaves are starting to turn. Many of the leaves are starting to turn, are turning yellow and orange and brown. And so Moon is negotiating with a baker to get some bread for now, but also to get some bread that is going to stand up for a journey. So hardtack or crisp bread or that sort of thing. And would anyone else like to be in the shopping scene?
I have no problem being in the shopping scene, but we've also, already done a scene together recently. So if somebody else would rather take that, I'm also fine with that.
I honestly think it's like, just as a personal matter, that it would be kind of the more realistic that Piccolo would be alongside Moon, because Piccolo's from Barley Town.
Works for me, and I don't think we've I don't think we've really had a scene together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Piccolo's there, and we're, so I'm talking with a baker and, asking for, I'm asking for like more preserved supplies that you'd be able to, that would, still be good in a few weeks. And I think the baker takes offense at that, like, oh, my bread is fresh. My bread won't be. You can't eat my bread in weeks. It'll be it'll be moldy and stale by then. I make the softest, finest bread in town. To that, Moon kind of rolls her eyes and turns to Piccolo, who's with her, and says, "So Piccolo, I know you're from this town. Where do you think we should go to get preserved food that we can take? I don't know how much longer. I don't know when the next time we're going to be able to find a bustling marketplace like this to replenish our supplies. And it's getting on to be a time of the year, and I don't really think any of us are particularly adept at hunting. Where would you suggest we go?"
There's a smokehouse around the corner that does dried and cured meat that will keep for quite a long time on the road.
That sounds perfect. Done.
Interesting. I think, if we're going to a meat place, it's probably somewhere that Piccolo knows well, so probably warmly greeted by the shopkeep. They exchange some sort of physical greeting, handshake, hug, something like that. What are we going to name this person? I just looked at the list. We'll call him Vago. Vago, we could use some provisions for the road here. My associate Moon and I are traveling with the Magus and need supplies for the road.
Yes, says yes, chimes in Moon. We are heading. We're at least heading as far as Istallia, and that is quite a long ways away. I mean, unless the Magus has a better idea, and well, she often keeps those ideas to herself. I would imagine that we'll be chartering a ship there, but Istallia is a long ways away. I've actually never been there before. So what can we get for our so what can we get for provisions? And at that, I think Vago basically starts selling you a whole lot of jerky of starts selling a whole lot of jerky of various sorts.
Yeah.
And I think Moon will ask the opinion of the guy that runs the charcuterie here, like, well, what else should we get? And I think he probably sends us over to a cheesemonger who sell and like we buy a small wheel of like hard cheese, something like a Parmesan that's going to stay good for a while. And then we go back to the farmer's market and we buy a bunch of like turnips and carrots and potatoes. And I think we make sure that we get a decent camp stew pot.
Nice.
And other provisions and victuals for the travel. Oh, and obviously since this is Barley Town, at least for now, we get a couple of small casks of beer.
Excellent.
Unless you want to add anything, I think that might be the scene.
Yeah, sounds good. I think I want to call out that Vago definitely makes a show of calling out some of the pork that he provides as being raised on Piccolo's farm.
Nice. And coins are exchanged, and yeah, I think we see Piccolo and Moon walking back up the hill to Barley Manor where we've been staying. So, I would suggest I'm looking at the time here, and I'm not sure we necessarily have time for everyone to go one more round. Because I know I have a pretty solid hard stop at 11.
Mhm.
Eli, would you like to do one more just to have everyone in Barley Town, and then we can figure out.
Sure. Yeah, I'd totally be down to do that. I can make it relatively quick too. So I think that as Piccolo and Moon are purchasing, the provisions, I think that Caspian has managed to finagle the borrowing of a small rowboat and has rowed out into has rowed, it's not, Oak Island isn't particularly, big island. It's relatively small island, it's a little stand of trees, of oak trees, of course, and they're old bent trees. She's sort of, rode out there and was just walking along the edge of the water, just flipping over the rocks and picking up crayfish and putting them into a little basket that she's brought with her, because it's just impossible to get proper shellfish this far inland, and she just really, it's been years since she has been home. And she remembers a much easier, much simpler time walking along the beaches and humming and having all the little crabs just kind of come up and picking, every fifth crab up and anything that's good eating and won't heavily impact, the overall, all about the sustainable harvesting and whatnot. In Istallia. And then, carrying home the sack full of crabs and bending over the pit and the hearth and roasting them and just cracking the legs, and the simplicity of the life that she led with her family and with her community there before the magic started to fade and it got harder and harder to make a living. And then it got harder and harder for them to feed themselves. And then slowly the people of her town moved away, set off across the sightless sea, or headed to other areas, and she left and made her way to try to figure out. But she dwells on those crabs fresh from the hearth as she picks the crayfish, as the leaves change and they start to fall.
Nice. So I think that feels to me like a good place to end the scene and to maybe end the session. That sound good to everyone? Okay. Cool. So we will pick up here again next week. So I like to do a little debrief called Stars and Wishes, where we just kind of like go around the table and talk about what worked and what we'd like to see next time. However, I prefer to do that off camera. So I'm going to end the recording here. If anyone was actually watching, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we will have another session in this series, and you'll be able to follow that on this playlist. So thanks everyone, and thanks for such a lovely game. I had a really wonderful time.